Ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, welcome to the Eric Deters Show. As always, we're sponsored by Deters Law. We're sponsored by Parks Yoga. Check us out on all the platforms. And today we're going to cover a little history. It's the Ides of March. You know what the Ides of March is, do you not? It's the day that Julius Caesar was assassinated, including Brutus et tu, Brute. And he was assassinated on the way to the Senate. Pretty crazy story. Do you know that he was stabbed 30 times and only one was fatal? Bad luck there, Julius. All right, our top story is the Silicon Valley Bank, which is going to be known forever by the acronym CVB. Everybody's going to be saying CVB. Do you know this bank spent $75 million on groups such as Black Lives Matters and other diverse organizations? They did the pronoun bit and everything else, just like the Signature Bank also. This bank was more interested in that. In addition to that, we find out their board of directors only had one banker on it. Now, it's not uncommon for bank board or big corporations to have diverse boards, but you got to have some knowledge when it comes to banking. It's truly amazing. They had one banker on the board. It's terrible. Alec Baldwin, the prosecutor, has withdrawn herself from the death of this young lady that Alec Baldwin shot based upon the facts and circumstances of a possible conflict. So he gets a new prosecutor. We'll see what happens. G's speech. This is scary stuff. Of course, we already knew what he's all about. He gave a speech to the Chinese Communist Party where, you know what his focus was? What he said? He said it's time for China to rule the world. He didn't say that exactly, but that's what he said. That's what he said. United States banks, guess what? They've lost $2 million in stock value. Now, what's the repercussions of that? When you lose $2 trillion in value, that affects the financial situation of not only the banks, all those people that own that stock. It's truly a ripple effect that has great consequences. For example, there'll be somebody that was going to borrow a certain amount of money for another bank based on that bank stock. That deal's not happening now. See the ripple effect? It goes on and on and on. Russia apparently messed with one of our drones, $37 million drone. You know, the way I look at this stuff goes on all the time. But guess what? Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. And by the way, I watched Tucker Carlson last night. It's the only Fox News show that I can stomach to watch. And you know what drives me crazy? Is nobody ever mentions what I've been saying from day one, is that we should have taken the action at the outset of strength to avoid the war in the first place. Nobody talks about that. Peace through strength. And speaking of Ukraine, you can't make this up. Can't make this up. Good old Zelensky, everybody's hero, is blocking Orthodox Christians from going to churches. They're blocking them from attending their churches. Zelensky's not a good guy. He's not. He's not. Biden and guns. Biden goes to California, signs an executive order, more restrictions on background checks, et cetera, et cetera. He just thinks that, you know what, that's the key to all of it. That's why it's all happened. Speaking of banks, Credit Suisse is the next bank that's probably going to go down. And by the way, they think there's about 200 banks that are in trouble. Where are we going to? The FDIC got enough money to cover all those, Joe? Of course they don't. All right, this won 7 Academy Awards. So I decided I had to watch the movie. It's called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. About some Asians that own a laundromat, live upstairs. Little sci-fi and everything else. This movie is awful. After watching 30 minutes of it, forcing myself to watch 30 minutes of it, I said, I don't even care how this ends. It was god awful. And to think it beat out Top Gun, Maverick, Elvis, and these other movies. You know what this is? This is the influence of the Chinese on the movie Hollywood industry. They own studios now. It's like, oh, let's give the Asian movie all these awards. I'm telling you, it was awful. Awful. Won 7 awards. Stanford University. This poor conservative judge was ripped apart by the diversity officer of Stanford and all the rest of these students. It is the antithesis of what should be going on inside law schools. But it is. Buffalo Wings won a lawsuit. They were accused of their boneless wings not really being wings. Duh. Like you didn't know that? Some goofball sued them. They won. Coming up next, Bulldog TV local news. Ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, welcome to Bulldog TV Local News, where we're sponsored by Deters Law, Parks Yoga, and check us out on all of our platforms. Well, our lead story. The Kentucky General Assembly passed a ban on gray gaming machines in Kentucky. See, they're going in the opposite direction of where I want us to go. The gray machines came in vogue in 2021, have been widely adopted throughout the state. Gray machines were not categorized as gambling because the decision is made in each game, making it a game of skill. Let me tell you something, folks. You know what? It's unbelievable. You know who led the charge against this? Churchill Downs. Law and crime. Christopher Souders has been sentenced to 30 years in prison for kidnapping and robbing a woman in Delhi Township. Souders lured the woman out of her home by holding on to her dog until she came out to look for the pet. Souders then kidnapped the woman at gunpoint and made her drive around and withdrew $10,000 from her ATM account. Travis Linhoff, I can't stand that guy, and Dalen Dabney have pleaded guilty to flying drones illegally over Bengals and Reds games. The men were charged by the Department of Justice for violating a flight restriction. The misdemeanor is going to result in their plea deal of 1 year probation and fines. I mean, and community service for doing that. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Local news. The fire department was called to Sycamore High School Tuesday when a blaze broke out in the school. Students had already been dismissed for the day and no injuries were reported. School officials think the fire may have been started during some demolition the school was undergoing. Cincinnati and Hamilton County Public Library System are hoping to be awarded some local property tax dollars. Administrators are nervous about a state bill that could drastically cut library budgets across the state. The bill leaves Cincinnati libraries in limbo on how much they'll potentially need from the next tax levy. Cincinnati officials met Tuesday for their first public hearing regarding the city's next budget. The topic that dominated discussion was support for a skate park location in the city. Cincinnati currently has no skate parks, but supporters hope to change that. And more Kentucky state news. A revamped version of House Bill 470 was presented to the Senate committee on Tuesday. The old version focused on gender-affirming care for transgender children. Now it includes pronouns and bathroom policies. The bill states addressing gender issues medically is unprofessional and unethical. And Kentucky lawmakers took a step forward for those who want medical cannabis legalized in the state. The bill was passed by the Senate committee by a final tally of 8-3. The bill moves on to the full Senate. Supporters are optimistic if it gets approved, the Senate will likely pass the House. You know what, folks? I've supported medicinal cannabis now for over a year in my campaign. Pounded, pounded, pounded. One of my opponents holds a press release a couple weeks ago. All the news covers it. It's truly amazing. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost has filed a suit against Norfolk Southern over damages of toxic rain derailment. The lawsuit is seeking to recover response costs, damages to natural resources, and civil penalties and damages. The suit targets $75,000 in damages, though Yost feels far exceed that number. They say $75,000 because it has to exceed the jurisdictional amount to be a federal case. This is the type of thing that journalists have no clue of what they're doing. In sports, Perrine gone. Fan favorite Samaje Perrine will not be returning to the Bengals next year. He'll sign with the Denver Broncos. And coming up next, World News with James Spin Spinley.
Hello, Hello Bulldog Nation, today's latest headlines. At least 190 people are now confirmed dead in Malawi after tropical storm Freddie ripped through South Africa for a second time. Terrifying amounts of brown water has cascaded through neighborhoods, sweeping homes away. The government has declared a state of disaster. French bin strikes in Paris. The bins are overflowing in large areas of Paris a week into a strike by waste collectors, with thousands of tons of rubbish sitting on the streets. Workers are striking over the pension age. Pakistan's main opposition leader Imran Khan has said the authorities are acting outside the law in their attempt to arrest him. He said they should be subject to the same law as the land. Mr. Khan is facing allegations he sold gifts whilst in office. He says the case is politically motivated. And in sports, Manchester City thrashed RB Leipzig 7-0, while Inter Milan could only manage a draw with Porto 0-0. Games later today, Napoli take on Frankfurt, while Real Madrid take on Liverpool. Thanks for watching, take care, have a brilliant day. Cheers.